What's up everyone, it's your boy Felix the Fox, and today we are discussing the simple nature of Pokemon's first generation, Pokemon Red and Blue. Fun fact, the thumbnail you clicked on for this video actually takes up more storage than both of these games combined. Bite-sized little guys we got here, but they pack quite the experience. See, if you take your mind and think back to the late 90s, these games for their size was massive to put on the Game Boy. It was a big deal. Everything that they fit into this game is truly remarkable for its time, and then adding the link cable for trading was evolutionary. If you are a fan of the series today, then you know just how complicated the battle system and even catching Pokemon has gotten. But in this first generation, to me, this is the prototype. Silver and Gold really took off for the franchise and became what Pokemon is today, but no one has any idea how big these two games were going to become. There was no special physical split, no natures, accuracy was determined by speed and not its own individual stat, which is really wild for battling. The Pokemon catch percentages and how the Pokeballs determine that don't really work right or how you would think from future titles, and the bad guy team was simply just bad guys. Characters written to make the player feel so accomplished when defeating them, making Team Rocket still the most iconic villain group in the franchise today. In this video, I want to break down why these games are still such a blast to play through today, and why the simplicity of these games are the reason they still have charm or replayability all these years later, especially when we have games like Scarlet and Violet coming out now. Pokemon Red and Blue were released as dual releases, creating a divisive decision in consumers about which one to buy. To me, this is as complicated as the first two games really ever got, the version exclusive. Nowadays, a different version of a Pokemon game can include different schools, a different time period, different structures, while for these first two games, simply just a Pokemon. Yes, there are different title screens, different trading NPCs, and other little things spread throughout, but the big thing here is that they had 11 Pokemon exclusive to Red and another 11 exclusive to Blue, leaving all 130 left in the base games. Meaning, if you wanted all 151 of these suckers, you gotta be social or you gotta be rich. But at least you can pull it off. Trying to catch every single Mon in Gen 3 alone nowadays is almost impossible. Speaking about the national decks, of course, catching the regional decks in each game is very plausible, but it was the added challenge of the national decks that really took the gotta catch 'em all to brand new heights and lows. Gen 1 is such a simple experience when it comes to catching Pokemon. Can it still be frustrating and unfair at times? Sure, but the feeling of where you are supposed to be going and doing is left to figure out to the player. Recent titles starting with like Gen 6 really added that like hand-holdy feature to the Pokemon series that I don't really like. I enjoy running through towns and talking to different people, reading signs and using context clues to figure out what to do next. This was clever immersion to put the player in this new world that they had created using the limitations of that handheld. I mean, no matter what, you will spend hours in a Pokemon game, based on those grinding hours alone, but this experience both feels like an earned marathon and one that has the potential to be shorter, because grinding XP does get old. Thus, later on for future titles, the developers added running shoes, shared EXP through all Pokemon in the party, bigger and better item bag, and other features have been added to really smooth out the marathon for players. Because in this first game, you are walking everywhere, man. You don't get a bike or learn how to fly till way later in the game, so until then, you are slow moving throughout the entire beginning. But honestly, because Kanto was designed in this way, it doesn't feel too much like a chore. Kanto is a small region. I mean, they literally put it into the sequel for these games. But not a single part of Kanto to me feels like filler. Every town, route, mon, gym, and person really feels important. Now, getting to why I love playing through these games so much, on average, I probably play a Pokemon game maybe once a month. However, I usually have a Gen 1 game going at all times, like usually in the background of these playthroughs. Why? Because it's so simple. At this point, if you are a Gen 1 fan, then you probably know how to run through the whole game the minute you press start. Maybe if it's only your third or fourth time going through them, you might still be using the map and a guide of some sort, but after that, you got it down. You can load in, know exactly what to do, where to go, and try so many different ways than you did on your last playthrough. I probably haven't used the town mapping at Kanto run in like 4 years. That is why the replayability of these games works so well. Yes, you still have the annoying features like the item bag and how frustrating the organization is, but like this was their first time. And then immediately in the sequel, they improved it and made it the staple that it is today. But back then, man, they just needed something for you to put your stuff in. Luckily, they did add item storage at the Poke Center, so you aren't just limited to what's in your bag. For new players to Gen 1 that come from newer titles, the item bag will be the most frustrating part of your playthrough. You will have to drop items you didn't want to just to pick up a key card that is needed for one room to gain access to another key card to let you use an elevator and meet the big boss that you will beat, and if you do beat him, you will get another item that you really do want, but if you don't have space for it, then you gotta come back. And yes, it is super annoying, but after you get used to it and you have a routine and know where everything is, using the item bag in this way is really cool in my opinion. I know where every item is at this point. I know what to store, what to use, what to trash, so playing through this game with knowledge like this offers an experience like no other. It feels like speedrunning. Playing the game using all of its handicaps as strategy is kind of like my favorite thing to do in old games. For instance, one of my favorite oversights in this game that is not in any of the other titles is that you can dig out of buildings in Gen 1. Yeah, I saw this on a speedrun one time and I never knew about it. Let's say you just beat a gym or you did the Giovanni fight and you don't have fly and you gotta book it to a Poke Center or the next part of your journey and you don't want to backtrack through the annoying building you just entered or deal with all the gym NPCs that you didn't battle, then guess what? You can just dig. And bam bam, thank you Dram, you're out of there. Honestly, a godsend when speeding up a playthrough or dealing with all those annoying things that you don't want to deal with. Another glitch I want to mention in this game is all like the cool manual inputs you can enter to get the outcome that you want. If you want like a perfect level 4 Nidorino at the beginning of the game, if you take this exact path here and enter these inputs and bam, every time you will get that level 4 Nidorino. Gen 1 is just full of stuff like this. Now, moving on to the main story and the battle system. Starting off with the story, to me, this is the prime way of mixing the gym battles with the overarching villain plot. See, in newer titles, especially Scarlet and Violet, the gym journey is a whole separate thing. Kind of now, there's just like a challenge that it is. But in Gen 1, the main boss of the whole story is the final gym battle. Spoilers, sorry, but the first time that I saw that, I truly was blown away. Like, that was a really good twist. And then you finally beat Giovanni again as a young prodigy 10-year-old Pokemon trainer, and then you go smack around the Elite Four for a bit, which again, this Elite Four to me, one of the hardest in the series, and I love how the devs did them, especially starting with Lorelei. So then you smack them around a bit as a 10-year-old, keep in mind. Then the dude who's been saying like, you stink all game, yeah, guess what? He did it first. So now you're like, oh my god, I gotta give this guy the biggest smackdown again. But you just took out 4 of the hardest NPCs in the game, and now you're running on fumes, and the game's like, yeah, now go humble this guy. Making the rival, Blue, to me, the best rival in a Pokemon game to date. He just gets on your nerves all the time because like, yeah, he is him. His granddad is Professor Oak, and he beat the Elite Four faster than you did. So you have every reason to humble this dude, and you get to do it in probably like the best way possible. Rivals don't even come close to this jerkbag. Like, why don't we get this again? Sword and Shield tried with Hop having his older brother be the champion, but like, this dude causes half the problems you deal with in the game, let's be honest. This dude does not make me mad at him. I'm slightly annoyed, and I honestly just feel bad half the time because I embarrass him so much. But in this game, losing, yeah, it's not an option. You have to beat this dude or you really just feel like a waste of energy afterwards. Adding to the fact that Red and Blue are kind of like polar opposite personalities, which is incredible considering the color theory for this too. Like, you know, Blue represents calmness, focus, empathy, and sadness. Red represents power, anger, and can be high alert. You don't talk the entire game, pretty much, as the player. Just silent treatment all these people who are going out of their way to help you, or just defeating villains without saying a single word. You're a savage. And my man Blue is cocky, a show-off, hot-headed, and often small-minded. Truly kind of what we just learned about these two colors, so if you ask me, I feel like this was done on purpose. I feel the only other time Pokemon deliberately used the title to tie into the game and its characters was like Black and White. The yin and yang of those games pulled it off really well. Other titles I don't feel as connected to the characters or the theme or the story because the devs didn't put hardly any thought into the characters. Take Cynthia and Cyrus from Gen 4. Great written characters. Love those. Arceus' whole like gallery of characters to me are 10 out of 10. Red and Blue starting the thematic battles we will see in future titles, but none of them still comparing to the scale that this was, to me, because it was so simple. Red, you. Blue, the rival. Red, Charizard, Blue, Blastoise, boom, done. We could do that all day. And the rest of the characters in the game kind of speak for itself. A solid villain team showing the darkness that can be in humans and how the right light can shed that evil and remind you of who you used to be when the world was just a simpler time. Just like these games do when I need to replay them. They remind me of how simple things used to be, not just in Pokemon, but all around. Not having a backlight trying to play a handheld device, manually grinding 6 Pokemon that could probably take 20 minutes in a game released now, but is a whole journey with these games. Pokemon started a franchise that's become quite literally the biggest franchise in the world. And it all started with you telling your mom, bye, I'm going to go travel the world and show every adult in this region that they don't have anything on a small, level-headed, and caring trainer that became the best in the world. And to make sure that you push through it, to make sure that you finish till the very end, they added this jerkbag to insult you and smell you the whole game without your consent.